What is up, guys? Wrestling Premier is here. The Attitude Era to those guys was fun. Just look at the other guys and gals like D-Lo, The Godfather, China. I felt like the stars of that time enjoyed what they were doing. But when I see the APA, it's a different level of enjoyment. They enjoyed whooping ass, sometimes for real, and just drinking beer and playing cards. Their run lasted for 5.5 years with a small break in between 2002 and 2003. And while they weren't the most impactful team in terms of accolades and moments, they were among the most entertaining for sure. Before this video starts, I just want to say, what the hell is that APA t-shirt? Explain to me. Always pounding ass. Yeah, that's pretty smart. I just shudder to think how that was discussed in the boardroom or an office. Hey, we should call it always pounding ass. And that t-shirt, man, I want to be caught dead wearing one of those. Right now, let's get into it. The Acolyte Protection Agency. As you all know, the two loved drinking beer and pounding ass. But how did they form? Well, before the formation of the Acolytes, Bradshaw was mostly a lower card heel. Sometimes babyface, depends on what time period. He wasn't really doing much. Farouk, on the other hand, he was the leader of the nation, and after getting kicked out of the group, he was in limbo. They just didn't have any plans for him, which I find quite bizarre because this guy was the WCW World Heavyweight Champion 6 years earlier. That's when they decided to pair these two. The Jackal, better known as Don Callis or Cyrus, began managing the team of Bradshaw and Farouk. At this point, both men weren't doing much as single stars, and yeah, that's it. The Jackal was starting to call them the Acolytes, and funny enough, Callis himself would get fired a couple of weeks later. He had some heat within the company, and Bradshaw himself wasn't really a fan. There's a story around about Bradshaw asking the Hardys to stick some toothpicks into Callis's car. This is where he changed his clothes due to the heat he had back in '98. Also, his nickname in the back was Monkey Boy, yet he was paired with the two. Since he was gone, the Acolytes were left in limbo. Well, a couple of weeks later, that wouldn't be the case. Why? They were paired with The Undertaker's new faction, the Ministry of Darkness. The duo were the henchmen that rarely spoke. They did Taker's dirty work, destroyed opposition, and one example of this is perhaps the most memorable. On the March 7th, 1999 episode of Heat, the Acolytes faced the new team on the block, Public Enemy. The match itself was a total destruction of the new team. They already made a name for themselves in ECW and WCW, but the Acolytes wanted to welcome the team in the WWF in the best way possible. Now, the story goes from JBL that Public Enemy arrived to the arena much later than the rest of the roster. You know what? Here it is. This is what he has to say. He explains it way better than I would. As we were standing in Gorilla, curtain right before ring entrance, the music was playing and one of them said to me, "We don't like the table spot, we will do something different." I just said, okay, what was I supposed to say? The table is the finish. I have no idea what they wanted to do. Ron turned to me and asked what happened. When I told him, he calmly replied, "If they don't want to go through the table, then we'll take the table to them." Jerry Briscoe was the only person in Gorilla, and this match was for Sunday Night Heat, and came straight to me alarmed and asked if we were putting them through the table. My response, yes, I just don't know if it will take 15 seconds or 15 minutes. Jerry said to me that we were to get the proper finish done. We didn't know what to expect. We didn't know if we were walking to a shoot or what we were walking into. We decided to get our heat from the start. We took over on them, and you could see for yourself in the video. After this, Public Enemy was basically gone from the WWF, and if you watch that video, basically you realize they got their asses handed to them, and they didn't retaliate. They didn't fight back. So basically, they were scared to fight, and they were disrespectful earlier on, and so the Acolytes put them in their place. As for Bradshaw and Farouk, their first real action as a team came on the May 31st, 1999 episode of Raw's War, when they got the chance to challenge the superhero team of Kane and X-Pac. At this point, the ministry and the corporation merged to form the corporate ministry, and so the Acolytes represented the supergroup. The match went pretty well for the Acolytes as Shane McMahon watched on from ringside. He influenced the results of the match when X-Pac ran into a chair shot. Bradshaw connected with a lariat, and they were champions. Their title reign, though, it wasn't remarkable, but the ending of it certainly was. Why? Well, you know how the Hardys were essentially the punching bag for the entire WWF roster? On the July 5th episode of Raw, the team challenged for the Acolytes' titles. For years, Jeff and Matt were getting beaten up, but on this night, though, they stepped up to the challenge, and with the coaching and guidance of Michael P.S. Hayes, who was wearing skater shorts, which is something you can't unsee, by the way, the duo upset the champions to capture the gold. If you look at it from the perspective of that time period, definitely an upset. I mean, the Acolytes were pretty much unstoppable in the tag division at this point. They were beating everyone left and right. Didn't matter if it was the Brood. Didn't matter if it was the Hardys. Didn't matter if it was the New Age Outlaws. They were winning. Most of the time, obviously. The duo were pretty pissed off with the loss, and they received a rematch at Fully Loaded. Beforehand, though, the two were demanding a fight with anyone. Their original opponents, D'Lo Brown and Mark Henry, had other plans. So, guess who came out? Hardcore Holly. And what followed was pure violence. He gets his ass beat, and the Big Show had to come out and stop this. Now, about their rematch, it went very well. First of all, it was a handicap match featuring Michael P.S. Hayes. Second, the ending was pretty rough. Poor Jeff Hardy. Unfortunately, once again, this was a transitional title reign, and at this point, the Ministry was no more. So the Acolytes were in limbo. They were mostly featured on Raw, though, but there just wasn't a story for them. There was, however, some stiff-ass matches against the Dudleys, so there's that. You guys should check some of those out, because they're rough as hell. But then things would change for the Acolytes. In an interview with Corey Graves on After the Bell, this is very, very recent, by the way, JBL discussed how the APA thing was formed. And I quote, "It was my birthday and we'd wrestle up in Philadelphia and we were down in Baltimore. We're staying at the old Red Roof by the airport and I wanted to go get something to drink. Godfather was riding me, Teddy Long, Ron Simmons. It's my birthday, so they're feeding me everything I can ingest. By the time I get to Baltimore, Ron goes, I'm going to bed. And I go, well, I'm going to the bar. It's my birthday. So I went down to the hotel, which we never did, but I knew there was going to be people down there to talk to. I ran into Vince and Shane. They bought me some drinks, put me in their car, and sent me back to the Red Roof. I get to the Red Roof, and I'm stumbling around, and Ron said, how did you get back? I said, Vince's limo. He goes, where, you went to the TV hotel? I said, yeah, and he goes, you still got connections in Japan? I believe he's trying to imply the impending firing of Bradshaw. Then he got called into Vince's office the next day. So I went in there and thought, okay, this is it. He's going to ring me out for being drunk at the TV hotel. And he goes, I want to put that on television. I said, put what on television? And I'm still so hungover, I'm seeing triple. He goes, you and Ron sitting around BSing and having beers. He goes, that's good stuff. He goes, I like that. That's just guys. And I go, you want me and Ron to sit down and drink beer on television? He goes, yes. He goes, I got it all figured out. The Acolyte Protection Agency, the APA. You're going to beat people up for money. So I go back and tell Ron, and he goes, yeah, when we going to Japan? I said, Ron, Vince wants us to drink beer on television. Ron goes, that's the best idea I've ever heard, and that was it. Damn, your career could swing upwards or downwards at a moment's notice. That's what happened here. These guys essentially became much bigger than they were previously due to Bradshaw getting drunk, basically. Now, when did the thing debut on TV? I believe it was around October 18th, 1999. Around that time period, they were playing cards with Howard Finkel and Chris Huge, and then it was like official the following week when they visited the Friendly Tap. Some guy wanted to buy them a drink, but they declined. Bradshaw and the guy had a little arm wrestling contest, and Bradshaw won when one of the guys asked if his darky friend can't count. This prompted a brawl. The duo caused total anarchy in the bar, and another time some goons were looking for a fight with the Acolytes and they obliged. The beating was completely one-sided, and the assumption was that these guys were bar owners. After the commercial break, they found the battered guys in a room and the fight, well, wouldn't call it that, continued. Looking at this segment, you can notice a significant change in their characters. They were into beer and cards. They weren't those guys that just came out with no emotion, just destroying people. Over the next couple of weeks, the new Acolytes fleshed out their characters. They were hustlers. One moment in particular saw Bubba claim he won a game of 6 cards, which was a game of 5 cards, except he was dumb. And it turned into a mean-ass brawl. Also, every time WWF was in Providence, the Friendly Tap was the Acolytes' home bar. They always visited. During a little program with the New Age Outlaws, they made their presence felt in the bar once again. A bunch of guys ran away realizing what's to come because of the previous incident from October. And funny enough, the Outlaws were there. As if APA didn't know. I mean, they were very well aware that the champions were there. The little douche from last time was there, and he was fixing to get his ass whooped. Billy and Road Dogg managed to run the hell out of there. And yeah, that's it. APA, they were good guys now. They're destroying anyone that disrespected them even a little bit. Now, the match of the Rumble didn't go well for the Acolytes. The Outlaws were cheating and X-Pac interfered, and so they lost. Luckily for the duo, things were much, much, much brighter from here on. On the January 31st, 2000 episode of Raw, the Mean Street Posse were desperate for help from the Acolytes. The two refused to help, and they were willing to kick their asses instead. But then, the trio offered a little something called money, and Bradshaw had a bright idea. Make a protection business called the APA. Later that night, the Dudleys asked for help too. They didn't have money on them, unfortunately, and they offered to write a check instead, which stunned Bradshaw completely. Farouk, though, accepted, but warned the duo, stating if the check bounces, their asses bounce too. Later that night, the APA showed what kind of business they specialize in. The Hardys were thrown around and totally destroyed. Edge and Christian tried to make the save, but the APA showed quality work. There was a little friction there when Bubba asked them to set up a table, and eventually they obliged though. The Hardys were basically dead, as you can see here, and APA got a 5-star review on WWF.com from the Dudley Boys. From there, many sought the services of the APA. Heels and faces, it didn't matter. Terry Runnels one night wanted them to do her own dirty work in facing Edge and Christian, and the guys nearly 100% of the time they delivered. All you had to do was pay. Midian one night didn't have money to pay for their services, and so he was forced to work for the group for a couple of weeks. After WrestleMania 2000, things started to pick up for the duo. One night, Triple H was arrogant enough to defend his title against Taka Michinoku, so Taka was smart enough to get some protection in the form of the APA. He had a very competitive match with Triple H. It was awesome. The game made everyone believe that maybe it's Taka's night. I'm not exaggerating. Just go watch. The fans, they were all in on Taka. The guy was lower card at this point. He wasn't really winning matches, but they were following his every move. Unfortunately, though, Shane brought out his dad to negotiate, I guess, but he opted to bring in a boss man and Buchanan to do the work. Chris Jericho the following week brought them out to provide protection in his title match against Triple H. The investment paid off as Chris Jericho captured the title, if only for 10 minutes. Now, the team weren't finding success as a tag team. Like, they were winning matches all over the place, but when it mattered the most, for the titles, interference or cheating cost them the match. But it was all good because the duo were featured on TV weekly, and occasionally they actually main evented shows. Their office, which I forgot to mention earlier, wasn't really an office. I'm sorry about that. It is an office. Look at that. There's a door, and about that door, if you don't knock, you'll get your ass rocked, basically. That's what it was with the APA. You have to knock on that door. Just ask Just Joe.
Hey, guys, what the hell are you doing? Door, Joe! You were just begging for a kicking. Knock!
I believe they knew their moment was going to come, win the titles, but until then, they were just going to have fun. The APA had a little feud with the Right to Censor, and this got them on the WrestleMania card where they teamed up with Taz. Jacqueline came out along with them, and they beat the duo. They rocked them, they destroyed them, they demolished them. But when the invasion occurred, the APA were somewhat more prominent than ever, I guess. On the July 9, 2001 episode of Raw, the APA got a WWF Tag Team title shot. Since Spike Dudley had a little issue with his brothers, he interfered and whacked Bubba in the ring Bradshaw at the clothesline from hell, and they were champions. During the invasion, the Acolyte Protection Agency sided with Team WWF as expected. They were given pep talks, rallying up the boys. They were leaders. Unfortunately, though, they were victims of the invasion's ongoing title changes, and so they lost the titles a month later when Test went rogue and turned on Team WWF to hand Canyon and DDP the gold. They failed to recapture the titles throughout the invasion. Bradshaw's attempts at singles gold were mostly unsuccessful until he captured the European title on the October 22nd, 2001 episode of Raw. He held the title for 8 days before losing it to Christian. Unfortunately, after the invasion, they were the team that lost to the champions, basically. Also, it was the same situation here as I mentioned earlier. Win the normal matches, but lose the title matches. But then in March 2002, we realized that all good things must come to an end, and that's what happened on the March 28, 2002 episode of SmackDown when the APA closed shop due to the draft. Bradshaw went to Raw while Farouk went to SmackDown. They held one final party in the office, and a bunch of WWF stars had fun, except for Christian. William Regal then entered the room and told the APA that they're out of business now. And it turned into an all-out brawl befitting the Acolyte Protection Agency's run. It was a sad ending, as you can see here, but at least the guys ended things on good terms, unlike other teams. Now, their singles runs were they weren't noteworthy, to be honest. Bradshaw won the hardcore title 18 times. He renamed it the Texas Championship too, and I believe he was pegged to get some kind of minor push, because he was teaming up with Austin in April and May of 2002, so there's that. Farouk, on the other hand, he became Ron Simmons once again. He was feuding with Reverend Devon for several months, I believe, and yeah, he just disappeared by the end of the year. He wasn't there. Bradshaw suffered an injury in September of 2002 that left him sidelined for 6 months. He wrote a book on financial management during his time away, and once he was able to compete, WWE decided to reunite the APA one more time. On the June 19, 2003 episode of SmackDown, the APA made their return, saving The Undertaker from an FBI attack. Bradshaw was sporting a new look, as you can see here. Now, this APA run wasn't memorable in terms of matches, I guess. Their matches were decent, they weren't bad, but they weren't impactful, memorable, or something like that. They were more memorable for their backstage segments, I guess. The most memorable thing to come from this run, I believe, was the Room Brawl. Vengeance 2003. That's probably the most memorable segment from this APA run. So basically, before Vengeance, the APA invites a bunch of stars to the Barroom Brawl. Spanky, Canyon, who's busy getting cable at his house, Brother Love, Doink the Clown, Johnny from Tough Enough, the Easter Bunny, the A-Train, the Brooklyn Brawler wanted to come, and the brawl itself was wacky as hell. The rules of the match were simple. drink, and fight. It was meaningless fun. I don't think it was supposed to be taken seriously, because if you do take it seriously, like, you're not gonna like it. But yeah, it's just some mindless fun. Brother Love proved to be a snake. Sean O'Haire was just chilling. Spanky was getting thrown around. Funaki was drinking. Matt Hardy was doing whatever. And one of the most memorable moments from this segment was when Funaki knocked himself out, I guess. Brother Love was treacherous as hell, but the APA, as expected, ended this thing on top. Other than that, the APA were featured on SmackDown nearly every week. They were featured on SmackDown pay-per-views too, but they weren't making an impact. Ron Simmons was considering retirement around late 2003, and WWE tied this into a storyline following WrestleMania 20. On the March 18, 2004 episode of SmackDown, Paul Heyman, in a very foul mood, ran into the APA who were making fun of him. He told the APA that they got a tag team title match, but if they lose, well, they're fired. About the match, they screwed up, and so the APA were basically gone. The duo couldn't believe what had transpired, and they immediately barged into Paul Heyman's office. Bradshaw asked Paul to say the words. He was threatening him, like, just say the words. But he reminded Bradshaw that he's not the one who's fired. It's Farouk. Why? Well, Bradshaw's got a successful portfolio. He's a stock market analysis, and he realized this. So he didn't walk out with Ron, as this would be very detrimental to his career. His partner was let down by this decision, and his final words, well, I'll be damned. That's what they were. So the APA was over. Enter JBL. And if you want the story of JBL, check out the Eddie Guerrero title reign video. I think I did a good job in there explaining how the JBL character was born. Anyways, APA's run was memorable. They weren't the most impactful team, but their segments were always entertaining, bar none. It doesn't matter. They were entertaining in the Ruthless Aggression era, the Attitude era, everything. They were just randomly paired up, and yet they managed to turn it into something very special and last 5.5 years together. So there's that. I personally love the APA, like I said. They did make a couple of reunions a couple of years later, like Raw 15th anniversary. They appeared at Raw 25. I shudder to think what would have happened had this team not been formed. Like JBL, he would have been gone. They were doing nothing with him in 1998. I think he would have disappeared. Farouk, who knows? He was doing nothing too. Maybe he could have gotten released. Maybe he would have worked as a road agent. But yes, the team was successful. It gave those guys something to do. They were having fun on TV every week, and you could see it. And if this team didn't happen, I don't think JBL would have been WWE champion, so there's that. Also, it's quite weird to see JBL as a lower card talent, and only 2 months later as WWE champion. So yeah, what did you guys think of APA? Please comment down below. And that's it for this video. Make sure you hit a Dominator on the like button, and perhaps the clothesline from hell on the subscribe button. Peace, I'm out.